Truly and awkwardly. I'm Patrick, and today we're going to be looking at some drip brewers. Starting out, we're going to do a quick overview of the couple manual ones that we have, which, in my opinion, or our opinion, are probably more the traditional ones, the more go-to ones in coffee shops and so forth. That's why we chose these four. There's plenty of other ones out there that are similar or from the same company in a slight different configuration. But these four were just the ones that we really wanted, that we thought would make a difference in the brews that we would produce out of them. And let's get started. First up, the Chemex. The Chemex is sort of unique because it's one vessel. It doesn't need a decanter to brew in. So it's one vessel. The paper filter sits on top here, which is also a very unique paper filter. We'll get into that in a little bit. And I think this retails for around $40–50. This is definitely the one that you want to pay most attention to out of all these four. You got to be consistent. You got to know what you're doing with it. Otherwise, it's going to be terrible. Any sort of flaws or unique characters or anything positive, negative, whatever in the coffee or that you're doing in the process to that coffee will really come through in this brew method more so than these other three. And this makes this sort of the go-to when we taste test our fresh roasted coffees and sample them. We prefer to use the Chemex over cupping because it's just more real life, and it still highlights a lot in that cup that comes out of there. And that's why we love it so much. It's a strong cup, it's not a weak cup. I'm sure you can dial it into something to make it a little bit more aromatic and a little bit lighter for sure. But the way we have it dialed in, the way we like to drink it, it's a bit of a stronger cup. Sort of like a French press kind of strong cup, but much, much cleaner, way more intense in flavors than French press. In its own way, obviously, because it's a drip brewer. French press is something completely different. Moving on, the Kalita, I think, is it's awesome. Awesome design, nice build quality, and this one I would say highlights acidity best out of all of those three. But not always. Obviously, it depends on the coffee. So, but yeah, acidity, brightness. I think this is probably the one that brings that out the best. Easy to brew with. You need a bit of patience because of the ridges in the filter. We'll get into that just a bit in more detail. But definitely acidity, brightness. This one, overall, this flavor highlights everything so dramatically. This would be the one, acidity, brightness. This would be the one. Then here, the Beehouse, very classy design, very thick ceramic, even thicker than the Hario, I believe, by a slight bit maybe, but just a very solid construction, very old school, and that's why I wanted this one in the collection. With the modern handle touch here, which is really cool, but the rest of the dripper is very old school, and I love that because I remember my grandmother making coffee in the manual dripper, very much looking like this one, which probably was an old Melita one that she had. But yeah, that's why I wanted that one, because it reminded me of that. Now this one is probably closer to a French press, full body. That pretty much sums it up. Full body. If you like drinking lighter coffees, this may not be your choice. Definitely more full-bodied into the Chemex direction of what it produces. Use a Melita filter in this one, which are very good filters. Same filter as in the Techniverm that we use, and full body, definitely very good. If you want a little bit more something cleaner than a French press, recommend this one. If you don't want to go as fussy as the Chemex, this would be a good compromise as far as full body. Then we have the V60 Hario, which is an awesome design. Just like all of these, awesome design, awesome build quality. And this one is probably the cleanest cup overall. it just produces the smoothest, cleanest cup overall. And typically we have around 12 different coffees that we roast throughout time periods that we have them, but we have at least 12 different coffees, sometimes more. So again, it all depends on what coffee you have, what roast level, so on and so forth, but just overall, generally speaking, cleanest cup, fullest cup, acidity, brightness, and just overall flavor profile brings it all out, good, bad, or indifference. Now we're going to go a little bit more in depth. Alright, so we're back. I want to start out talking about filters a little bit. This is the Kalita filter. Quite pre-pressed and ruffled. A very cool feature. Kalita makes a very similar filter. Very similar filter, which probably would fit, but we always order the actual Kalita filters because filters can vary as far as the paper material being used quite a bit. So it's the Kalita filter. Very cool, and then you will kind of see what I'm talking about when I blend in some of the footage as far as brewing with the Kalita, as far as the ridges, how you kind of have to wash that a little bit, but it's a pretty cool filter. Then we have the Chemex, which is a cone shaped filter. Also very nice quality, just kind of fold it back and forth like so, and you have your sort of cone shape, ice cream cone sort of filter. Also very good filter, like I said, very clean flavored. This is the Kalita filter that we use for the Beehouse. Also you do this fold technique here, twice back and forth. On the bottoms, I'll sometimes do it 3 times to make sure it lays over. And then you have a somewhat of a cone shape filter, which is a bit big for the Beehouse, but like I said, we use the same one for the technique worm back there. As you see, the Craftsman had some coffee this morning. Have to finish to clean that out. And here is the Chemex, which is probably very cone shape, sort of similar to the V60, but obviously way larger. And it's basically just a big paper sheet that's been folded. And you fold it and you take one sheet, and you have 3 sheets on this side. And then this is how you would insert it into the brewer. Let's get into the brewers. So here's the Chemex, obviously, and then here would the filter go. So 3 sides would go up front, the separate single side would go on the back. Just like I have it here now. And you would pre-rinse. This is a filter you have to pre-rinse relatively vigorously. Otherwise you still will have lots and lots of paper taste left in your coffee. So the design, very simple. As you see, we have the one with the actual glass handle. There's also one with a wood collar, which aesthetically, the wood collar one is obviously more pleasing, just pops a little bit more. This here with the handle, just a little bit more practical. So if you're a bit more in a rush and you don't want to take the thing apart, this is probably the way to go. As you see, it gets a bit dirty. We use them all our brewers relatively often, and they also sit out for decoration more or less. So they get a little dirty, a little dusty, but since we pre-rinse everything anyway before use, not that big of a deal. And then you would just pour your coffee like so. So this is a one brewer with the carafe where you built in an hourglass shape, which is a really cool history to this brewer. I'm not going to get into depth to that. Visit the Chemex website. It's a cool website. They have lots more of gadgets on their websites, different types of brewer. The one with the collar, I believe, is called Classic. This is the regular version, and they also have a hand blown version of the same exact ones, which are quite pricey. I think they retail around $100. This is between 40 and 50, I believe. And this is the 10 cup, I'm pretty sure. We had this many years. It's been used and abused quite a bit. And like I said, we typically use this as our taste tester as far as new roasts coming in, as we rotate our stock in coffees. And this is the one that we figure out, is it good, is it bad, indifferent, what pops, what needs to be refined in the roast. We prefer this over cupping any day. Because like I said, it's just more closer to reality of what normal people would drink. Yeah, so it's the Chemex, absolutely cool device. Very tedious because if you do something wrong, that will show in the cup. So it's definitely a brewer device that you have to pay attention to when you brew your coffee each and every single time. So if you want to just have a Chemex, you better have some patience to figure out to make a good cup in this, and you also need time. All of these you need time, but this one you need to be focused and have the time to have a good cup of coffee each and every time. That's the Chemex. Any more questions? If you guys want a little bit more detailed review of the history or something like that, let me know in the comments below. If not, then we're good. We'll grab the Beehouse next. Two-hole design. Has these ridges for water flow and efficiency, and also has a small ridge at the very bottom. I'm not sure how well you can see that. The handle is cool, it's very modern, you kind of have to hang on to it pretty good once this is hot and stuff, but it works just fine. And then you can see the bottom here, you have these holes here, which is for ventilation, so the coffee, as it brews into whatever vessel you're brewing it into, if it's straight up in a coffee cup or a carafe or some sort of decanting device, whatever, doesn't create suction and it can actually flow. Again, this is probably the most full-bodied drip brewer that we have, close to a French press or a Chemex. It sits kind of cradled in there. Doesn't create as much flavor as the Chemex, however, way easier to brew. It's a sort of a no-brainer brewer. You can pulse brew, you can brew it all in one shot. The outcomes are very similar each and every time, unless you have super taste buds, you can detect absolutely everything. Then that might be different for you, but the regular person, yeah, it's just a simple, good brewer, full body coffee. If that's your cup of tea, then this would be your manual drip brewer for sure, because simply works, simple, reliable, all the above. Full body coffee with the Beehouse. On to the Kalita. The Kalita. Kalita has a 3-hole design on the bottom. Also has ridges around here, which are supposed to help with the just overall flow of the coffee. You can see that. Not sure what metal this is. Obviously it gets very hot since this is all metal. Also has a hole here to avoid to create suction, and that the coffee can actually drip through. Has a little handle here which just has a rubber part to it to protect, and it works well. It doesn't get too hot. And the Kalita, like I said, brings out brightness and acidity, probably the best out of all 4. And this is also a little bit more finicky than the Beehouse. Not as finicky as the Chemex, but you definitely got to pay attention to, especially with the filter being in here. With these ridges, if you hit that too often with water constantly, that water is just getting right through, not getting much extraction or any extraction on the actual coffee will water your cup down, so you gotta stay a little bit more in the middle, slower, controlled flow rate. Definitely need a gooseneck kettle for this bad boy. For the Beehouse, not so much. For the Chemex, absolutely. But other than that, if you like brighter acidic coffees, probably more in the lighter roast direction, this is definitely one that can help you highlight all these flavor attributes. Make a very enjoyable cup of coffee. And yeah, that's pretty much that. On to Hario V60. Hario makes many different gadgets, from kettles to these stirpers, many different variants. There's also a couple different variants of the Beehouse, mostly colors. There's several different variants of Kalita brewers out there as well. Hario as well has many different variants of brewers, and make the same exact one in glass, ceramic, and I believe also metal and copper. Also very many different colors are available. This is the O2 model, and it has a singular hole design, sort of like a vortex or hurricane sort of funneling to keep the coffee moving down through into the singular hole. Unlike all the other ones, it's similar to the Chemex, where this does not have any sort of airflow to let it through to avoid suction. However, that does not seem to affect this brewer whatsoever. If, for comparison, the Chemex, this little pour spout gets blocked, which sometimes happens if you don't align the filter nicely, and this is why you have 3 sides here and 1 side here, because you want that wall here and that airflow to come down through so the coffee can actually decant into the bottom half of the Chemex. For some reason, that does not occur with the V60. The main reason, I would believe, is simple to explain, because we have the matching V60 Hario 03 canter. You look at this, I'm not sure how well you can see this on camera, but the brew spout leaves slight opening, which creates that air suction. So if you want to brew the V60 directly into a cup, it may or may not create suction. So just a little heads up, decanting device with the V60 probably will work better in general. And typically if you see videos with the V60, they have the decanter from Hario as well. This is the large one, 800 milliliters. And they also come in various different styles. This is just kind of matching with this sort of rounded off design, which is very appealing. So yeah, this one here, by far the clearest cup of coffee out of the bunch, and also fairly easy to brew on, similar to the Beehouse. However, the more technique you use on this one, it can definitely show the more refined you get with your brewing technique. And that's for all of these, obviously. The Beehouse is just a little bit more forgiving in that aspect than the other 3. Nice traditional handle, really nice ceramic. We had all these brewers for very, very, very long, and none of them really showed too much wear and tear, other than we should probably keep our things a little cleaner. But such is life. Could always be better. Yeah, so the V60 is definitely a good brewer. Out of all of these 4 brewers, which one would be our favorite? That's hard to say, and it depends on the actual coffee that we're trying to make. So for a lighter coffee, I would probably say either one of these 2. Up to like medium roast, dark roast. If there's a dark roast that has citrus in it, like citrus note that has that obvious acidity to it, that would work. But in general, if you have darker coffees that are very chocolatey, it may just bring out some of the bitterness more in our experience. But medium, light coffees for sure. Darker roasts that have some acidic notes to them, orange, citrus, etc., or just some natural acidity. That certainly would work. Darker roasts, medium to dark roast, the Beehouse shines. It just makes them really robust and really flavorful cup of coffee in these a little bit darker roasts. As far as acidity or non-acidity, it doesn't really matter in this one. Like I said, fairly forgiving. Probably the most forgiving out of all of these. And then obviously the Chemex. This bad boy, I'll say all the above. And if there's any sort of bad attributes in a cup of coffee, this will bring it out. And if it's just a perfect cup of coffee, this is your go-to. If you're very finicky about your coffee and you have that perfect roast, this is your go-to. Because this does all of these in one, once you figure it out. This takes you some time to figure it out. This a little bit more full-bodied. Cleanest cup, acidity, and overall lightness as well. Very good in this one. So this kind of wraps it up. Hope you enjoyed. Hopefully I didn't mumble too much about these brewers. I'm going to try to blend in some video footage on actually brewing on these. Not sure how well that will work. I'm not an editing king by any means, but we'll give it a shot. And yeah, any questions specifically on these? Drop in the comments if I missed something. If I didn't highlight something good enough, please drop it in the comments. I believe we're never done learning, so if you have something that you discovered that I haven't, please share. I would appreciate it. Until next time.